All right, so in this lesson, I'm going to introduce to you an inverse relation. So given any function, you could find the inverse of it. And the inverse is quite simple. To find the inverse of a function, all you have to do is interchange x and y. And what I mean by interchange is that you're going to switch those two variables around. And then your result is going to be what we call the inverse relation. Okay, so in this lesson, I actually really want to go through what the graph of an inverse relation looks like. So I'm getting the graph of y is equal to f of x on the right-hand side here. So here's your original function, y is equal to f of x. Now, if I wanted to write the inverse of this function, remember, you're going to interchange x and y. You're going to switch them around. So your function is going to become x is equal to f of y. So notice the key differences between these two functions. Your x and y are switched around. Okay, so now let's go to the graphs here. I have a table of values right here. We want to set up a table of values for f of x and the table of values for the inverse. So that is going to come up right there. So the first thing you want to do is work with the table of values for the original functions. We have quite a few points we can label here. We have a point at negative 2, comma 0.25. Okay, another point at negative 1, 0.5, and a 0, 1. Okay, let's keep going here. We have a point at 1, comma 2. And 2, comma 4 is my last point that I could see there. Okay, so to produce the inverse graph, you simply take your x and your y values and you switch them around. So your x's are now going to become your y's. So this point right here is going to become 0.25, negative 2. Okay, this point right here is going to become 0.5, negative 1. So let's keep going here. 1, comma 0. We have 2, comma 1, and 4, comma 2. Super, super easy concept, okay? So to find out what this graph looks like, let's go ahead and plot all these points. So 0.25, negative 2 is right here, okay? And 0.5, negative 1 is right about there. 1, comma 0 right here. Okay, 2, comma 1 and 4, comma 2. As best as I can here, I'm going to sketch the graph. The shape of the graph doesn't change, but the orientation definitely does. So when you sketch the inverse graph of this given function, you're going to get something that looks a lot like this. Okay, so notice how these graphs look related. So this is the graph of x is equal to f of y, the inverse graph. All right, so look at the two graphs. How do they look? How do they look to you? How similar do they look to you? Well, the shape didn't change, but the orientation did. So how to explain the orientation is notice that each point of the original graph, y is equal to f of x, is reflected in this line, y is equal to x. So this point right here is reflected and goes right here. Okay? I'll use a different color to show this. Negative 1, comma 0.5 becomes this point right here. So notice how they're all being reflected in the line y is equal to x. Kind of cool, hey? So that's actually going to be the relationship with every single graph and its inverse. It's going to be a reflection in this line y is equal to x. So to summarize this introduction here, interchanging the x and y coordinates on the graph of a function produces a graph that is a reflection through the line y is equal to x. And that resulting reflection is what we call the inverse graph. Okay, so I really like this sentence. It sums up the inverse graph of a function. So that's it for my introduction to inverse relations.